It is official after a lot of speculation yesterday, which we talked about here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. The Birds making it official this morning. Vic Fangio is their new defensive coordinator, taking over for Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. Adam Schefter had the report yesterday that the Eagles were certainly interested in Vic Fangio after he parted ways with the Miami Dolphins. And today, that news, it's going down. Vic Fangio is going back to his home state of Pennsylvania and is going to be the Eagles defensive coordinator. Schefter with this tweet that former Dolphins DC Vic Fangio traveling to Philadelphia this morning to officially sign that contract to be the Eagles' new head man of the defense. Eagles officially get their lead candidate. And what a day it was on Wednesday. We were live for the end of the year Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman press conference. Then literally during that press conference, as they're fielding questions about the offense, Nick Sirianni going to bring in a new OC. That OC is going to bring in a new offensive system, which fans should be excited about. They were taking questions about what happened with this defense, and then the news broke that Vic Fangio was leaving Miami, and he was expected to be the number one candidate atop the list for this organization. And Sirianni was asked, is Vic Fangio coming to Philadelphia? He said, I can't confirm any of the reports. We have a lot of lead candidates that we are very, very happy about who we're set to interview. And I was talking with producer Chip right before the show. If you were joining us live or if you tuned into that news conference, it was delayed by a half hour. So I think Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni had a deal in the works to bring Fangio to Philly, who they wanted to hire last year. Now, my instant reaction to this, now that it is official, Vic Fangio is looked at, he's recognized, he's thought about as one of the best defensive minds in football. And I think this is much needed for this Eagles side of the ball because they were a mess last year. There was no leadership. They do still have some pretty solid players, but they were coached so poorly. And now Vic Fangio can be a leader, and he can be the head coach of the defense, and Nick Sirianni is going to kind of be in this CEO type of role where he oversees the entire team. And after that press conference, I kind of got the indication that Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, want to take Sirianni away from having his fingerprints all across the offensive side of the football. And with Vic Fangio, I like this because he does have the ability to maximize players. He's not going to do something just idiotic and have Hassan Reddick drop back in coverage, taking him away from pinning his ears back and getting after the quarterback, as he's been one of the best edge rushers over the last 3 to 4 years. And Sirianni here of note, opting for a veteran defensive coordinator who's not going to leave to get a head coaching job. Now, what is he going to do at OC? I'd like to see a young, creative offensive mind with new ideas who can be influential on that side of the ball, but I like the veteran mind on the defensive side of the rock. Now, the big question here, has the NFL caught up to Vic Fangio's scheme? His defenses in recent memory have struggled a little bit with Miami, but there are reasons for that we're about to get to. With Denver, that defense wasn't the same. And then a lot of the Vic Fangio disciples have struggled a little bit. Of note, Sean Desai, a Vic Fangio disciple. And a lot of people categorize this defense as a bend but don't break type of defense. And I understand why people have some issues with that, but I'm going to explain why you shouldn't overreact and have too many worries coming up here around the corner. First, this is why you subscribe to the channel. It's early. I was on the couch drinking some coffee out of the French press. The news broke. We got the show together. I rushed to the studio. Chipper's here as well, and we're bringing you the latest Eagles news. And when breaking news does happen, we cover it, we dissect it with informative, entertaining, and insightful analysis. Join the 71,334 people who are subscribed to the program by locking us in and hitting that sub button right now. This was a long time coming, by the way, and this is a pretty funny backstory here. Some of you know it, some of you don't, but our job is to educate the people. The Eagles wanted to hire Vic Fangio last year as defensive coordinator. He was a consultant with the Eagles in 2022, and he grew up in Pennsylvania. He was their lead candidate a year ago, But the Jonathan Gannon tampering situation with the Arizona Cardinals kept Philadelphia from hiring Vic Fangio because they thought that Gannon was coming back. So in the meantime, they didn't know that Gannon, during the Super Bowl week and the preparation, was having conversations with Arizona. So Vic Fangio's like, okay, Gannon's coming back. I understand that. He's been with this team the previous 2 years. I want to work. I want to lead a defensive unit. I'm going to go to Miami to pair up with Mike McDaniel. So that kept Philadelphia from hiring Fangio. But this is also a cool backstory here that Fangio gets to return home. Some people might call him a Philadelphia area guy. I'm from Westchester. I deem myself to be a Philadelphia area guy. He's from Scranton, 2 hours north of Philly. I don't really deem that to be Philadelphia area guy because it's a completely different part of the state in northeastern Pennsylvania. Shout out to the 570. I used to work there. But Fangio did grow up in Dunmore, neighboring town of Scranton, and he got his start coaching when he was a young pup under the legendary Jack Henzis, who was known in northeastern Pennsylvania as one of the greatest high school football minds, a guy who took the Dunmore Bucks 10 square miles. I know my history, to a couple of state championships and won a couple of state titles, and they were always very competitive in the high school realm of football in Pennsylvania. Now, as for where Miami ranked last year defensively, some good numbers here, some poor numbers here. They were second in sack percentage. And Philadelphia 2 years ago led the NFL with 70 sacks, 15 more than any other team. This year, consistently, they failed to get after the quarterback. That was a massive problem because the linebacking play was atrocious. The safety play wasn't good. James Bradbury really struggled as he turned into James Burntberry. And when Darius Slay was out, you had a couple of young players in that Eagles secondary, and they were not good. And I always say this as my defensive philosophy. You get after the quarterback, and he doesn't have time to go through his reads, survey the field, pick you apart. It makes the back end's job a lot easier. And for Vic Fangio, his defenses oftentimes have been able to generate sacks. So second in sack percentage last year, the Dolphins were 9th in yards per play, 15th in expected points added per play, 16th in offensive points per game. That's not awful. 16th in success rate, 19th in defensive DVOA. They were 20th in third down rate. So, like Philadelphia, Miami did struggle to get off the field at times, 25th in the red zone. But, as I always like to say, in business, in life, in relationships, in sports, context is important. The Dolphins suffered a ton of injuries to a lot of marquee players all year long, which hindered the defense, but I thought Vic Fangio did a pretty good job of maximizing some of the defensive players on that roster, given the circumstances. After the bye week, Miami, 7th in EPA per play and 4th in stop rate, and their bye week came in week 11. But all year, they had injuries to Jaelan Phillips, very good defensive end, Bradley Chubb, another good defensive end, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jerome Baker, Xavien Howard, JeVon Holland. They had to start off the year with Jalen Ramsey being out for a while after he injured his knee in training camp trying to guard Tyreek Hill. So all of that is important when you look at some of the statistics of that Miami defense. And I'm going to go spin zone on everybody here. I thought that down the stretch, with an offensive guru in Mike McDaniel, a part of the Kyle Shanahan tree, creative, innovative, offensive mind, the Dolphins' issues were more on the offensive side of the football as compared to the defensive side of the football. They were expected to average 30 points per game, but Mike McDaniel's system got halted by some physical defenses. It wasn't the same when they tried to spread teams out. The running game took a dip. And as I always like to say, Tua Tagovailoa, absolutely mid. But when you have an offensive coach, you're expected to bail out the defense. But down the stretch, Miami's offense wasn't able to do that, so it kind of made Vic Fangio's defense look a little bit worse than it actually was. All right, with that, I want to ask you this. I want you to grade the hiring here of Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator. It's so funny how a calendar year about can change things, right? Last year when we were talking about hiring Vic Fangio as DC when Jonathan Gannon was set to leave, or if he left, everybody was all about it. And then we talk about this yesterday, and people are in the comment section saying, this is an awful hire. I'm going to give it a B, A, B, C, D, or F. You let me know what you think right now down in the comment section. And as we continue to further this conversation, you just think about Nick Sirianni, young coach. A lot of the coaches on his staff, younger coaches as well. And he's had a lot of the same minds as part of this coaching staff. So new, fresh ideas haven't really been brought to the forefront. Now they are with Vic Fangio, but also you have this influx of young coaches and this coaching staff still going to undergo changes, but now you have a much-needed veteran defensive coach in here. And I do think that's important for the current construct of this Eagles team. And I still believe that this Eagles squad has an opportunity here to compete for a Super Bowl in 2024 if they iron out some of the wrinkles. And if you are looking for a veteran defensive mind who has a track record of success, who can elevate personnel, who can scheme up blitzes as well as sacks, and sometimes he changes the look of safeties post-snap, and that confuses offenses. He's an experienced play caller. I like the elements, I like the nuances that Vic Fangio is going to be able to bring to the table. And can this Eagles defense get worse than they were last year? You look at where Philadelphia ranked, opposing yards per game, 26th. Opposing yards per play, 25th. Third down rate, Philadelphia 30th. Red zone, stop percentage, 30th. Sack percentage, 24th. And then you look at Miami here. They were 11th in yards per game. They were 9th in yards per play. Third down rate, 20th as compared to Philadelphia's 30th. Opposing red zone, not great, but again, when you don't have dogs, it's hard to keep teams out of the paint. And then sack percentage, Miami number 2, Philadelphia 24th. At the very least, with Fangio coming to the city of brotherly love, I think the Eagles will at least be competent. And last year, they were not competent at all. This Eagles defense in 2023, one of the worst that I have ever seen. And I've been watching football for a really long time, since I was 4 years old, watching the Eagles when they were an awful organization at the time, and they had breakdowns. They had bad communication. There were lapses, bad personnel usage. I don't think that those issues are going to happen with Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator, because we'll see what happens in free agency and which players the Eagles are going to bring back. But when you canvass this Eagles roster on the defensive side of the football, I still think they have a quality defensive line. Again, we'll see what happens with Fletcher Cox. We'll see what happens with Brandon Graham. But you have Hassan Reddick. You have Josh Sweat. You have Jordan Davis. You have Jalen Carter. And in particular, with those young players in Jordan Davis and in Jalen Carter, the latter, all-rookie team, is Vic Fangio going to be able to bring the best out of those players? He's been able to do it throughout his entire coaching career. Can he do that with Philadelphia? I think that Darius Slay can still play. He was bothered by that knee injury, and when you look at some of the raw numbers, he was pretty good on the outside. Now, on the other outside corner spot, you have to figure out what's going on with James Bradbury. You might have to eat some of that salary, but if you eat some of that money, you're not paying Eli Ricks or Keely Ringo anything. So it helps make up for that. And then maybe you can address cornerback in the draft, and you can get a young, cost-controlled asset in here to kind of make up for eating a lot of that Bradbury salary. Philadelphia and Howie Roseman, I still think they need to invest in the aforementioned position of cornerback. Howie Roseman, can you please address the linebacker position? And I think you need to bring in another safety in here. If you restructure the contract for Kevin Byard, I'm down to bring him back. I like Reed Blankenship. The real ones who watch the show, my perfect offseason plan, bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Mend the fences, bring him back. I think that swagger, the ball skills, the instincts, him as an overall player could really lift this Eagles defense up in 2024. As for the notable stops for Vic Fangio, thrived under Jim Harbaugh at Stanford and with the Niners. And if Nick Sirianni were to get fired, I had said my number one candidate, Jim Harbaugh. Excellent on both sides of the ball. He wins big everywhere he goes. He has a great eye for coaching talent. Mike Macdonald, Ravens defensive coordinator, number one defense. I imagine Jesse Minter Michigan's defensive coordinator, best overall defense in college football, follows him now to the Los Angeles Chargers. But that Jim Harbaugh tree, really impressive. Vic Fangio is a part of that. And when he was the defensive coordinator not long ago against the Chicago Bears, those Bears defenses, some of the best in the NFL. Double doink, Cody Parkey, thank you. And he does have head coaching experience as well with the Denver Broncos. But again, I want to go back to that thought. He's not going to leave now for another gig. He's going to be a defensive mind. He's going to be a defensive coordinator. We'll see if he's an outdated boomer, but at least he's going to be able to have this defense playing at a competent level, and he's going to have this defense playing better than they were after a historically bad season this past year. Who do you want now as the Eagles' offensive coordinator? Drop me a name down below. We appreciate you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe because when Eagles news goes down, we got you covered.